guys, it's Erin, and today I want to share with you my Classicsathon TBR. So Classicsathon is hosted by Lucy the Reader, and I'll link her readathon announcement and TBR in the description box below so you can go find out about that if you would like to participate. It sounds like a whole lot of fun and super low pressure, which is great. I kind of hesitated over whether or not I wanted to participate in this because I actually heard about it in the middle of Booktubeathon, which is a lot of reading, and I was kind of like, do I really want to participate in another readathon right away? But I decided I did, mostly because it's so low pressure and I know that I can actually meet the challenges, or challenge as it is, because the only thing to do is to read a classic during the month of August, and I'm definitely going to do that. So I figured, hey, why not participate? I'm not sure if I'll do like a little bit of a reading vlog. I'll definitely do a wrap up and share what I actually read if you're curious and my thoughts about those works. So look out for that towards the end of the month. The other thing that made me hesitate just a little bit is that because of Booktubeathon, I wasn't able to start my reading for this until August 6th, which was yesterday. Actually, I'm filming this a little late. And then also, school starts for me on August 20th, and I'm not sure how much of my own reading I'll be able to get done after that. During the first week, probably a little bit, so I should be able to kind of continue this readathon to the end of the month, but at the most I'll only have 3 weeks instead of 4, but again, I figured I probably will be able to complete at least a couple of books during that time, so why not just go ahead and jump in. So without any further ado or rambly prefaces, which I am bad about, let's share, here's my TBR. The first book that I am definitely reading is Oliver Twist. This is actually the first reading assignment for my Victorian novel class that I will be taking this fall. I'm really, really excited about this class, even though it's going to be a ton of reading. One of the books we're reading is Vanity Fair, which is like 1,000 pages, and there's like 6 other ones, but it'll be great. I'm excited. So the first book that we're reading is Oliver Twist, and the professor actually contacted us and asked us to have at least the first half read by the first class. Graduate classes are often 3-hour seminar classes, and you meet once a week, and so you just, like, you can't waste a class, but there's also, you've got to have something to talk about. So anyway, my first goal is to read Oliver Twist. I am showing you the image because I don't actually have the book yet. I'll probably buy it tomorrow, hopefully. I just haven't been able to get to the bookstore. Oliver Twist is by Charles Dickens. It is about a young orphan boy, and that's kind of all I know. Like, I know the story. He falls in with a gang of thieves, and then stuff happens, and it's a happy ending because it's Dickens. I'm familiar with the story through like popular culture, and I think I read one of the Children's Illustrated Classics versions of Oliver Twist like a long time ago, and I might have even read the book, but I don't actually remember. So I'm looking forward to getting to this one and reading it with kind of fresh adult eyes. The next book that I want to get to, and in fact have already begun, is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I've read Emily Bronte's novel, which is Wuthering Heights, and I've read Jane Eyre a couple of times, but I haven't read anything by Anne, and so I would like to read this. I posted about reading this book on Instagram yesterday, I think, and I got a whole bunch of responses of people like, oh, I'm about to read that, or oh, I love that book. So I'm super excited now about it. I've had it for like a year, and I've just kind of never really gotten around to it. So I am on page 77. I am definitely enjoying it so far. This story is narrated by a man named Gilbert Markham. He's telling his story to a friend. I think technically he's his brother-in-law. Just there's been some hints about that throughout the story, although he hasn't actually come out and said it. The like gentry family's nearby abandoned house gets rented, and the person who lives there is a mysterious Mrs. Graham and her young son Arthur, and Gilbert, the narrator, becomes fascinated by this woman, and that's kind of all I know. I have no idea where the story's going. I have no idea if it's like gonna end well or not. Like, who knows? It's an adventure, but I'm enjoying it so far. The next book I just need to finish is Waverley by Sir Walter Scott. I'm about halfway through, and I'm not gonna start over. I think I'll remember enough of the plot that I won't be too confused. Waverley is one of, if not the first historical fiction novel, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to pick it up. It's pretty much the reason I wanted to pick it up. I was just interested to see, I like seeing the beginnings of genre fiction, and this has been very interesting. Scott is very conscious of the fact that he is doing a new thing for his readers. He keeps pausing, for example, and reminding them, like, okay, this is how things were 60 years ago. I know they're not like this now. Little, like, kind of he's like gently easing them into this convention. And his Waverly novels, they become this whole big series. They take place, Ivanhoe is the most famous one, in the Middle Ages, kind of all over, so he definitely branches out and starts exploring the possibilities of historical fiction, which I think is really interesting. This particular novel is about a young man named, Edward, and he is a kind of impressionable, romantic young man. Scott tells us that as he was growing up, he could have been a very smart and well-educated young man, but he was kind of allowed to do whatever he wanted to do, and what he really wanted to do was feed his imagination with a lot of romantic medieval stories. And so now he has all of these like highfalutin ideas. He's encouraged to go into the army and is sent to Scotland to join a unit there, but he stops for some visits with some like distant connections and gets drawn into the Jacobean plot of the early 1700s. And this is where a group of Scots men and women decided that they wanted to put a descendant of King James I on the throne instead of these new Hanoverians, and they try and it fails. Edward is rather entangled into this romantic idea of the true king and all of that stuff, so gets himself into a little bit of trouble there, but it also allows Scott to explore those political kind of conflicts from that time, and to show some of the more important, I think he ends up at the Battle of Culloden, which is the kind of big decisive battle where the Scots are defeated. So very interesting so far. I kind of stopped. I got a little annoyed with Edward because he's just so impressionable and naive, which he's supposed to be, but it's a little annoying. But anyway, I'm looking forward to finishing this one. So those are the 3 books that I definitely would like to get to in the next 2 or 3 weeks. If I have some extra time, I would also like to get to the next 3. 2 of them are pretty short, and one of them is a little bit longer, so I don't know if I'll get to them or not. Check back for my wrap-up to see if I'm successful or not. The first one is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I read this quite a while ago, about 5 years ago, and I just kind of like to revisit it. I recently read The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, which is a kind of like what if Jekyll was really a real person and so was Hyde, and what if he had a daughter and that daughter kind of uncovered what he had done when she was older. So I'm interested just to revisit the story and kind of refresh my memory of the real story. This is quite short. It's only about 60 pages long. This is the Norton Critical Edition, so it's got a lot of like extra stuff in the back. So interested to kind of revisit this little novella. I do think I should be able to get to this one unless I just take forever with these other books. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is about a scientist, Dr. Jekyll, who is interested in the root cause of good and evil and creates a serum, allows him to like separate out the good and the evil parts of himself. So you get Jekyll, the good doctor, and Mr. Hyde, the wicked fiend, and it explores the kind of ramifications of an experiment like that. If I have time, I would like to get to Dracula by Bram Stoker. I've been thinking about rereading this for a long time, and it just seems like a good excuse to get back into it. I read this in the same class as I read Jekyll and Hyde. It was a Gothic novel class, and this was quite enjoyable, and I'd like to revisit it. This is the longest of the Maybe books. It's about 330 pages or something, and so if there's anything that I don't get to, it'll probably be Dracula, but I'd like to try anyway. So Dracula, again, if you haven't heard, is about, it's actually quite interesting. It's a collection of letters, journal entries, newspaper clippings. It's kind of a found or compiled story, and it's about a group of Englishmen and a couple of women who are entangled in and confronted by this Eastern European vampire, and it's quite interesting and different, so yes, very enjoyable. The first great vampire story. And then the last thing I would like to get to is The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This is like considered one of the greatest ghost stories ever written. It's also James's probably his best known work. I think a lot of students get assigned it in high school because it is short, and I just have never read it. I have read and taught In the Cage several times, so I probably won't read that one, but I would like to get to Turn of the Screw. I don't really know a whole lot else about it except that it is a ghost story, and it's one of those stories that's like, was it really true or was she just a little crazy, that kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see for myself what the story is about. So that plus Dickens is my TBR. It's rather ambitious, I admit, but hopefully I will be able to get to at least half of it, and I am very much looking forward to this challenge. I think having a challenge will help motivate me to kind of prioritize these readings. I do have other books that I want to read this month. Knowing that I'm doing a readathon for classic works will just encourage me to prioritize these and pick them up. Thank you to Lucy the Reader for running this. This is a great idea, and I'm really excited that it's out there. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.